The emergency lights pulsed red across the dimly lit cargo bay of Space Station Horizon, casting strange shadows on the metallic walls. Dr. James Walker's footsteps echoed as he moved between the towering storage containers, his handheld scanner beeping steadily. The station's AI had detected an unauthorized life form in this section, and as the lead xenobiologist, it was his job to investigate. Security teams are 20 minutes out. Dr. Walker, the AI's calm voice, informed him through his earpiece. Please maintain a safe distance from any unknown entities. James checked his scanner again. The life signs were getting stronger, but something was odd about the readings. They showed signs of distress and pain. He rounded another corner and froze. There, wedged between two cargo containers, lay a creature that made his scientific mind race with excitement and fear. Its body was roughly the size of a large earth tiger, covered in crystalline scales that shifted colors like oil on water. Each scale caught the emergency lights and reflected them in mesmerizing patterns. The creature's 6 limbs ended in retractable claws that could tear through reinforced steel like paper. James knew exactly what he was looking at, and his blood ran cold. A ravager, the most feared predatory species in known space. Every child learned about them in school. The apex hunters that had destroyed entire colonies, the monsters that even battle-hardened space marines feared to face. But something was wrong with this one. Its breathing was labored, and a dark fluid leaked from a wound in its side. The creature's scales flickered weakly between deep blues and purples, colors James had never seen mentioned in any research papers about the species. Dr. Walker, the AI interrupted his thoughts. Thermal scans confirm this is a juvenile ravager. Security protocol demands immediate containment and override security protocol, James said quietly, his eyes fixed on the wounded creature. Authorization Walker 7 Delta. Override accepted. But Dr. Walker, I must insist. Log this as a medical emergency instead of a security threat. James interrupted again. He took a careful step forward, and the ravager's head snapped up. Its 4 eyes, each a different shade of amber, locked onto him. But instead of the mindless aggression he expected, James saw something that challenged everything he knew about these creatures: intelligence and fear. The ravager tried to stand but stumbled, its scales flashing a bright burst of yellow before fading to a dull gray. James had spent years studying alien biology, and something in those color changes spoke to him. This wasn't random. It was communication. Easy there, he said softly, kneeling down just out of reach. I'm not going to hurt you. He kept his voice calm and steady, like he would with an injured earth animal. The creature's scales rippled with new colors, soft greens mixing with the blues. It made a chirping sound that James had never heard mentioned in any ravager encounter report. James reached slowly into his medical kit and pulled out a universal tissue regenerator. The ravager's eyes tracked his movement, but it didn't attack. Instead, its scales began shifting in a regular pattern, cycling through colors in what seemed almost like sentences. You're trying to talk to me, aren't you? James whispered, fascination overriding his fear. Everyone says your kind are just mindless killers, but that's not true, is it? The security teams would arrive soon, and James knew what standard protocol demanded: immediate termination of any ravager, regardless of circumstances. But as he looked at this injured juvenile, seeing intelligence and pain in those alien eyes, he made a decision that would change the course of human-alien relations forever. Seal off this section, he ordered, already pulling more medical supplies from his kit. Route all access requests through my authorization only, and start recording everything. If I'm right about this, we're about to rewrite everything we thought we knew about ravager biology and behavior. The creature watched him work, its scales now showing subtle patterns of green and gold. As James carefully approached with the tissue regenerator, he noticed something else. The ravager was deliberately keeping its deadly claws sheathed, even though it must have been in pain. You understand I'm trying to help, don't you? James said softly. Well then, let's prove everyone wrong about your species, shall we? What he didn't know then was that this moment, this simple choice to help rather than fear, would spark a chain of events that would reshape humanity's place in the galaxy. And it all started here, in a quiet cargo bay, with one human choosing compassion over fear. The security team arrived at the sealed cargo bay doors exactly 18 minutes later. Captain Mike Thompson, his face red with anger, pounded on the reinforced glass window. Walker, open these doors immediately, he shouted through the intercom. That thing will tear you apart the moment it gets its strength back. James didn't look up from his work. The Ravager's wound was slowly closing under the tissue regenerator's blue light. He had named it Rex, simple and friendly, like the creature was proving to be. Rex's scales rippled with gentle waves of green and gold, colors that James was beginning to associate with calm and trust. I'm fine, Captain, James replied calmly, keeping his eyes on his patient. Rex here could have killed me 20 times over by now. But look, he gestured to the security camera feed showing the cargo bay. No violence, no aggression, just communication. Communication. The captain's voice dripped with disbelief. It's a Ravager. They destroyed the Martinez colony last year. Rex's scales flashed dark red at the raised voices, and James quickly lowered his tone. Easy there, big guy. Nobody's going to hurt you. He turned back to the intercom. Captain, I've made a breakthrough. These color changes aren't random. They're language. James pulled out his tablet and showed the camera what he'd been recording. See these patterns? They repeat with specific meanings. Blue-purple means pain. Green-gold is calm. Yellow is fear. They're not mindless killers. They're intelligent beings with their own way of talking. The security team muttered among themselves. James could see doubt beginning to replace fear in their eyes as they watched Rex deliberately keep its lethal claws sheathed, its movements careful around the human helping it. Dr. Walker. A new voice joined the conversation. Station Director Roberts appeared on the video feed. While your discovery is interesting, we have strict protocols about Ravager encounters. The board of directors is already calling for immediate termination. Rex's scales shifted to deep purple with streaks of yellow, a combination James hadn't seen before. The creature made a soft trilling sound and attempted to stand. No, stay still, James said gently, placing a careful hand on Rex's crystalline shoulder. To his amazement, the Ravager complied immediately, its scales returning to the calm green-gold pattern. Director, James said, his voice firm but respectful, I'm invoking Article 23 of the Xenobiological Research Charter. It gives senior researchers the right to protect unique specimens that could advance our understanding of alien species. Rex isn't just unique, he's revolutionary. Everything we thought we knew about Ravager behavior is wrong. To demonstrate his point, James held up a light panel he'd rigged from medical equipment. He flashed it in a pattern he'd been practicing. Green, gold, blue. Rex's scales immediately rippled in response, repeating the sequence back with subtle variations. My God, someone whispered from the security team. It's actually talking back. Director Roberts was silent for a long moment, watching the interaction. Finally, she spoke. You have 48 hours, Dr. Walker. Prove to me this isn't a mistake, or I'll have no choice but to follow standard protocol. Thank you, Director, James said, relief evident in his voice. He turned back to Rex, whose scales were showing a new pattern, swirls of silver mixed with the green gold. I think, James said slowly, studying the pattern. He's trying to say thank you too. As the security team reluctantly dispersed, James began setting up more permanent medical monitoring equipment. He had 48 hours to prove that humanity's most feared enemy could be a friend instead. The task seemed impossible, but as he watched Rex carefully manipulating a water bowl with its deadly claws, showing incredible precision and control, he knew he had made the right choice. All right, Rex, he said, pulling up a fresh research document on his tablet. "Let's figure out what you're trying to tell us. And maybe," he smiled as Rex's scales rippled with interested patterns of silver and blue, "maybe you can help us understand why your people and mine got off to such a bad start." What James didn't realize was that in those 48 hours, he wouldn't just prove Rex's intelligence. He would uncover secrets about the Ravagers that would challenge everything humanity thought they knew about their place in the galaxy. 24 hours into his deadline, James sat cross-legged on the cargo bay floor, surrounded by data screens and half-empty coffee cups. Rex lay nearby, watching with curious eyes as James reviewed footage of their communication attempts. "See this pattern here?" James pointed to a recording, speaking both to his research log and to Rex. "When I asked about family, the scales showed this distinctive wave pattern: purple, silver, then deep blue." Rex's scales rippled in those exact colors as if responding to the memory. James had learned that Ravagers had perfect color memory, able to repeat patterns they'd seen even once. But this was different. There was emotion in the way the colors moved. "You miss them, don't you?" James asked softly. The creature's scales darkened to a stormy gray, and it made a low keening sound that made James's heart ache. He reached out instinctively, placing a gentle hand on Rex's crystalline shoulder. Instead of pulling away, Rex leaned into the touch. A knock on the window interrupted the moment. Dr. Lisa Reed, the station's head of security research, stood outside with a stern expression. "Walker, open up. We need to talk." James sighed but nodded to the AI to let her in. As the door slid open, Rex's scales flickered with uncertainty, but remained calm. Lisa entered cautiously, her hand near her stun weapon. "That won't be necessary," James said, nodding to her weapon. "Rex understands you're not a threat. See the green edges in his scale pattern? That means he's cautious but peaceful." Lisa's eyes widened as she watched Rex deliberately retract its claws, a universal sign of non-aggression. "Remarkable," she whispered. "But that's why I'm here. The data you're collecting, it contradicts everything we know about Ravager behavior." "Because everything we know is wrong," James said, pulling up his research screens. "Look at this footage from the Martinez colony incident. Everyone assumed the Ravagers attacked unprovoked, but watch their color patterns." The screen showed Ravagers approaching the colony, their scales flashing in complex patterns of green, blue, and silver, the same colors Rex used for peaceful communication. "They were trying to talk to us," Lisa breathed. "But why were they there in the first place?" Rex suddenly became very alert, its scales shifting to a bright, urgent pattern. James had seen this behavior when Rex wanted to show him something important. He quickly set up his light panel. "Show us," he encouraged. What happened? What followed was an incredible display of color and movement. Rex's scales painted a story in light, patterns showing large ships, different from human vessels, hunting Ravager packs through space. The patterns showed Ravagers fleeing, seeking shelter near human colonies, trying to communicate their need for help. "They were refugees," James said, his voice thick with realization. "They came to us for protection from someone else. But we didn't understand, and they didn't know how to make us understand." Lisa sat heavily on a nearby crate. "This changes everything. If we can prove this." "That's not all," James interrupted, excitement building in his voice. "Watch this." He turned to Rex. "Can you show us your home? Where you came from?" Rex's scales began displaying the most complex patterns yet. Beautiful swirls of color showing vast space gardens of crystalline plants, cities built in asteroid fields, and most surprisingly, schools where young Ravagers learn to control their colors and movements. "They're not just intelligent," Lisa said slowly. "They're civilized. They have culture, education, art." She looked at James with new respect. "No wonder the director gave you a chance." "Speaking of which," James checked his watch, "I have 20 hours left to prove all this officially. Will you help?" Lisa looked at Rex, who was now displaying a hopeful pattern of silver and gold. The creature had moved protectively closer to James, but its posture remained non-threatening. "Yes," she said finally, "but we'll need more than just color patterns to convince everyone. We need to understand exactly why they came to human space and who was hunting them." Rex's scales suddenly flashed with a pattern they'd never seen before. Dramatic bursts of red and silver that filled the cargo bay with dancing light. "I think," James said slowly, "Rex is trying to tell us that his pack might be coming to look for him, and when they do, we'll have our chance to make first contact the right way." None of them knew that this chance would come sooner than they expected, and it would test the fragile trust between humans and Ravagers to its very limits. The station's warning sirens jolted James awake. He had fallen asleep at his desk, surrounded by research notes. Rex was already alert, scales blazing with urgent patterns of red and silver. The same colors from earlier. Multiple ships detected approaching the station. The AI announced calmly. Energy signatures matched known Ravager vessels. James's heart raced as he checked the time. His 48-hour deadline wasn't up for another 6 hours, but it seemed the universe had other plans. Rex moved to the window, scales shifting in complex patterns that James now recognized as excitement mixed with worry. "That's your family, isn't it?" James asked, though he already knew the answer. Rex's scales pulsed in confirmation. The cargo bay doors burst open as Director Roberts rushed in, followed by Captain Thompson and Dr. Reed. "Walker, we have 5 Ravager ships surrounding the station. Please tell me your breakthrough with communications wasn't just wishful thinking." "It's real," James said firmly, already setting up his improved light communication panel. "Rex has been teaching me their language. Those ships out there, they're not here to attack. They're here for their lost child." As if to prove his point, Rex began projecting a complex series of colors, telling the story of being separated from his pack during an attack by the mysterious hunters, finding shelter in the station, and being helped by humans. "Director," Lisa stepped forward. "Everything in Dr. Walker's research checks out. The Ravagers aren't our enemies. They're refugees seeking protection from a greater threat." The station shook slightly as the Ravager ships moved closer. On the external cameras, their crystalline hulls shimmered with the same communication colors Rex used, but on a massive scale. "They're trying to talk to us," James said excitedly. "Look at the pattern. It's the same peaceful greeting Rex showed us." He turned to his equipment and began programming a sequence of lights across the station's external panels. "Walker, what are you doing?" Captain Thompson asked nervously. "Saying hello," James replied, not looking up from his work, "and telling them their child is safe with us." The response was immediate. The Ravager ship's color patterns shifted to waves of green and gold, the colors of trust and gratitude. One ship moved closer, and the station's cameras showed a large airlock beginning to open. "They're requesting permission to dock," James translated, watching the color patterns. "They want to meet us face to face." Director Roberts looked between the approaching ships, Rex's peaceful demeanor, and the extensive research data on the screens. She took a deep breath. "Permission granted, but security teams will." "With all due respect, Director," James interrupted, "bringing armed security will send the wrong message. Let me go with Rex. Let's show them the same trust I showed him." Rex moved to stand beside James, scales glowing with a pattern that needed no translation. Complete trust and protection. The message was clear. No harm would come to James while Rex was there. "I'll go too," Lisa volunteered. "I've reviewed all the data. These beings have technology far beyond ours, yet they're approaching peacefully. This could be the most important first contact in human history." The director looked at Rex, who was now displaying the same colors as the ships outside, a symphony of peaceful communication. Finally, she nodded. "Make us proud, Dr. Walker." And she smiled slightly. "Thank you for showing us there's more to fear than understanding." As James and Lisa followed Rex toward the main airlock, James thought about how much had changed in just 2 days. He had started with a simple choice to help an injured creature, and now he was about to become humanity's first official ambassador to the Ravager species. "Ready?" he asked Rex, whose scales were showing excited swirls of silver and blue. The airlock began to cycle, and through the window, they could see the crystalline forms of adult Ravagers waiting on the other side, their scales already beginning to tell their own stories. The real challenge of bringing their two species together was just beginning. The airlock doors opened with a soft hiss, revealing 3 adult Ravagers. They were magnificent, nearly twice Rex's size, their crystalline scales creating patterns of light that danced across the station's walls. James held his breath as Rex stepped forward, scales glowing with joy. The largest Ravager, its scales a deep azure color, moved toward Rex. Their scales synchronized in a beautiful display of blues and silvers, a family reunion that needed no translation. James watched in amazement as Rex's colors told their story, showing how James had helped heal their wound and learn their language. The adult Ravagers turned their attention to James and Lisa. Their scales shifted into complex patterns that James now recognized as curiosity and cautious respect. The azure Ravager stepped forward, carefully retracting its claws in the same peaceful gesture Rex had shown them. "Hello," James said softly, using both his voice and the light panel to display the greeting pattern Rex had taught him. "Welcome to Station Horizon." The azure Ravager's scales rippled with surprise and pleasure. It responded with a pattern that James understood as a formal greeting, followed by new colors that Rex quickly helped him interpret. An invitation. "They want us to visit their ship," James told Lisa, excitement clear in his voice. "They say they have something important to show us." Lisa looked nervous but determined. "Well, you trusted Rex when everyone else wanted to shoot first. I guess it's time for us to show the same trust to his family." Director Roberts' voice came through their communicators. "Are you sure about this, Dr. Walker?" James watched as Rex moved between his human friends and his family, scales showing patterns of protection and trust toward both groups. "Yes, Director. Sometimes you have to take a leap of faith." The walk through the Ravager ship was like nothing James had ever seen. The corridors were crystalline, like the Ravagers themselves, with walls that pulsed with living light. They passed rooms full of young Ravagers in what looked like classrooms, learning to control their color patterns. Other areas held gardens of crystal plants that chimed softly when touched. Finally, they reached what appeared to be a command center. The azure Ravager, who James now understood was Rex's parent, and the pack leader, activated a large display. The images it showed made James and Lisa gasp. They saw recordings of massive ships, dark and angular, hunting Ravager packs across space. The hunters used weapons that disrupted the Ravagers' crystalline structures, causing immense pain. The Ravagers had fled, seeking refuge in human space, not because they wanted to attack, but because they had nowhere else to go. "The Matrix Collective," Lisa whispered, recognizing the ship's design. "We've had our own troubles with them, but nothing like this." Rex's parent showed more images. Peaceful Ravager colonies destroyed, families scattered, all because the Collective wanted to harvest their crystalline technology. The Ravagers had tried to warn human colonies about the coming threat, but without a way to communicate, their attempts at contact had been seen as attacks. James felt a deep sadness, followed by determination. He turned to Rex's parent and carefully produced a pattern of colors that meant alliance and protection. The adult Ravager's scales lit up with hope. "We can help each other," James said, using both words and colors. "Teach us your language, your technology. Let us be your allies against the Collective. Together, we're stronger than alone." The command center erupted in a spectacular display of colors as the Ravagers responded enthusiastically. Rex moved to James's side, scales showing pride and friendship. Lisa smiled, watching the historic moment unfold. "You know," she said quietly to James, "when you decided to help one injured alien, You probably didn't expect to end up brokering an alliance between species. James laughed softly. Sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness. He looked at Rex, who was now helping translate between the humans and his family. And sometimes the most dangerous-looking creature just needs someone to give them a chance. As the humans and Ravagers began planning their alliance, none of them knew that their newfound friendship would soon be tested by the very enemy they feared. The Matrix Collective was closer than anyone realized. The warning came 3 days after the alliance was formed. Station Horizon's long-range sensors detected a fleet of ships dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Their angular black shapes stood in stark contrast to the crystalline beauty of the Ravager vessels. Matrix Collective ships, James announced grimly, standing in the station's command center. 15 of them. Rex's scales flashed with urgent patterns of red and silver, while his parent, whom James had come to know as Elder, displayed colors of grim determination. The Ravagers had been teaching the station crew their color language, and now those lessons would be put to the test. They're broadcasting a message, the station AI reported. Text only. Surrender the crystal forms to us, or we will take them by force. Director Roberts looked at the assembled group of humans and Ravagers. In just 3 days, the station had transformed. Ravager families had been given orders, their children playing with human children, teaching each other their ways of communication. Now all of that was threatened. We won't surrender anyone, she said firmly. This station protects its own. James watched as Rex and Elder exchanged color patterns rapidly, a battle plan forming in lights and shadows. Director, he said, I think our friends have an idea. Elder stepped forward, scales showing a complex pattern that James now recognized as a strategic proposal. The Ravager's crystalline technology wasn't just beautiful. It could be used to disrupt enemy systems, but they needed human help to get close enough. A joint operation, Lisa translated, excitement in her voice. Human tactical knowledge combined with Ravager abilities. The plan came together quickly. The station's small security fleet would work with the Ravager ships, using human ECM technology to get the Ravagers close enough to use their crystalline disruption fields. But they needed something else, a distraction. I'll go with Rex, James volunteered. In a small shuttle, we can slip past their lines while they focus on the main battle. We can disable their flagship from the inside. Rex's scales flashed with immediate agreement, showing patterns of protection and determination. Elder hesitated, then displayed colors of blessing and caution, a parent's worry for both their child and their new human friend. You have 1 hour before they're in weapons range, Captain Thompson reported. Whatever we're going to do, we need to do it fast. The next 45 minutes were a blur of preparation. James and Rex boarded a modified shuttle, equipped with both human stealth technology and Ravager crystalline shields. The rest of the fleet, human and Ravager ships flying together, prepared for battle. Remember, James said to Rex as they powered up the shuttle, we just need to get to their main engineering section. Your crystalline disruption field will do the rest. Rex's scales showed confidence mixed with friendship, a pattern James had come to cherish. They launched into space just as the Matrix Collective ships came into view. The battle began instantly. Human ships darted between the larger collective vessels, drawing their fire, while Ravager ships used the chaos to get close, their crystalline hulls pulsing with disruptive energy. James and Rex's shuttle slipped through the chaos, cloaked and silent. They were halfway to the flagship when something went wrong. A stray shot clipped their shuttle, damaging the cloak. Alarms blared as enemy targeting systems locked on. Rex's scales suddenly blazed with a pattern James had never seen before, pure protective determination. Before James could react, Rex wrapped his crystalline body around him, scales hardening into an impenetrable shield. The shuttle rocked with impact, but Rex's protection held. When James could see again, his friend's scales were dimmed with effort but showed no regret. You protected me, James said softly, checking Rex for damage. Now let's finish this together. They crashed their damaged shuttle directly into the flagship's hangar bay, Rex's crystalline field disrupting the security systems. As they prepared to make their final push to engineering, James realized something profound. In protecting each other, human and Ravager had proved that the galaxy's most lethal predator was also capable of being its most loyal friend. The real fight was just beginning, but now they would face it as one. The flagship's engineering section loomed before them, a maze of dark corridors lit by harsh artificial light. James and Rex moved silently, their shadows dancing on the metallic walls. Behind them, they could hear the chaos of battle through the ship's hull, human and Ravager forces fighting together against the Matrix collective fleet. Almost there, James whispered, checking his tablet's map. Rex's scales pulsed with quiet acknowledgement, showing the new battle pattern they had developed together, stealth mixed with readiness. They reached the main engineering doors just as the ship rocked with another impact. Through their communication link, they heard Captain Thompson's voice. "Walker, whatever you're going to do it fast. We can't hold them off much longer." The doors were sealed with multiple security systems, but that's exactly what they had planned for. Rex stepped forward, his crystalline body beginning to glow with increasing intensity. The Ravager's natural ability to disrupt electronic systems through their crystalline resonance was about to be put to its greatest test. Rex's scales blazed like a small sun, sending waves of energy through the door's systems. James had to shield his eyes, but he could hear the satisfying sound of security systems failing one by one. The massive doors slid open with a groan of protest. Inside, Matrix collective engineers turned in surprise. Their cybernetically enhanced bodies moved to defensive positions, but they weren't prepared for what happened next. Rex unleashed a full crystalline disruption pulse, not to harm, but to disable. The collective's cybernetic systems crashed, leaving them conscious but immobile. Now, James rushed to the main control console, his fingers flying over the alien controls that Lisa had taught him to recognize. Rex stood guard, scales shifting between warning colors to keep the engineers at bay. James found what they needed: the fleet's central command protocols. The Matrix Collective's greatest strength, their networked consciousness, was about to become their greatest weakness. "Ready?" he asked Rex, who responded with a pulse of determined agreement. Together, they initiated the shutdown sequence they had planned. Rex's crystalline energy merged with the ship's systems through James's programming, creating a cascading failure that would spread through the entire collective fleet. The effect was immediate. Through the engineering section's windows, they watched as the massive collective ships began to power down, their weapons falling silent. Emergency systems kicked in, keeping life support active, but nothing else. It worked. Lisa's voice came through their comms. "The whole fleet is dead in space." Rex's scales exploded in patterns of joy and triumph, filling the engineering room with dancing lights. James laughed, reaching out to touch his friend's crystalline shoulder in their now familiar gesture of companionship. The aftermath of the battle brought changes nobody had expected. The Matrix Collective, without their networked weapons and cybernetic advantages, were forced to negotiate. The truth about their attacks on the Ravagers came to light, leading to a galaxy-wide condemnation of their actions. 1 month later, James stood in Station Horizon's newly constructed Great Hall, watching humans and Ravagers working together to build something unprecedented: the first joint Human-Ravager Academy. Rex, now officially recognized as a junior ambassador, stood beside him, scales showing patterns of pride and contentment. "Did you ever think," James asked his friend, "that getting injured in our cargo bay would lead to all this?" Rex's scales shifted to show amusement, followed by the pattern that had become his special sign for James. Friend, protector, teacher, all merged into one beautiful display. Director Roberts approached them, smiling. "The first class of human students are ready to begin their color language training," she said, "and the Ravager young ones are eager to learn human sciences. Would you two do the honors of giving the opening speech? James looked at Rex, who was already displaying excited patterns of agreement. As they walked together toward the Academy's main hall, James reflected on how much had changed. The species that humanity had once feared most had become their closest allies, all because one person chose to look past appearances and show kindness to an injured creature. Around them, the station hummed with activity. Human children played with young ravagers, mimicking their color patterns with light toys. Scientists from both species worked together, combining human ingenuity with Ravager crystalline technology. And in orbit above them, human and Ravager ships patrolled together, protecting their shared future. The galaxy's most lethal predator had become humanity's most loyal friend, proving that sometimes the greatest strength isn't in fighting alone.